call to order the Ascension Parish Council meeting for Thursday, April 3rd. If everyone would please stand for the prayer and the pledge led by Councilman Ken Scheck-Snyder.
Dear Lord, we come to you tonight and thanking you for all the good things that we have in this parish, all of the good people. We'd like to especially thank you for putting this winter behind us and moving on to the spring, to the new growth and the new goodness for this spring and summer. We'd like to ask you to allow us to, everyone to come here and make good decisions for the people of the parish tonight. And we'd also like to ask for your sympathy and have our prayers for Mr. Robert Lemon's family and who had passed away recently, and also the Baptiste family and the Robinson family who had members that had passed away recently. We ask all this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Kent. Madam Secretary, all members are present. Item number 3, I wish to announce that there will be a public hearing to adopt the millage rates for the year on May 15th at the Gonzales Courthouse on 828 South Denver Boulevard. Public comment sign-in period reminder, if you wish to speak, please fill out a comment card with Secretary and you have 3 minutes. We'll move to 5A presentations. The first is Main Street Donaldsonville updates and Stash the Trash efforts. Melissa.
Missy Juanda, Downtown Development District,
Okay.
is going to tell us about their effort to stash the trash this weekend.
Well, it's a little anticlimactic because now it's postponed until next weekend. We were going to have that this weekend. We're doing more with the Keep America Beautiful. We do get a grant through them, through Keep Louisiana Beautiful. And while we don't have exactly the same Recycle Roadshow that y'all have, I had talked to Don Heisel about hopefully bringing one over here. We're doing it on a smaller level, but on a parish-wide level. I'd love if y'all would reconsider becoming an affiliate again of Keep Louisiana Beautiful. It really opens up everyone, including Donaldsonville, Gonzales, Prairieville, everyone, to different kinds of grants that we can get. I am going to leave some information up here, but I just wanted to just very briefly let y'all know a few things that we have going on that are important to the parish. We are a downtown development district. We're the second largest historic district. We're a cultural district. We're an enterprise zone. And of course, we're a Main Street, Louisiana district. Just yesterday, we did get the delineation from Main Street USA and through National Preservation Trust that we are one of 7 in the entire state of Louisiana to make all of our goals, all of our mission points, and met all of our tenets. So we'll be having a bigger announcement coming from Washington, D.C. in regards to that. We're very proud of that. And also just wanted very quickly to let you all know that we have different resources that we are going to be bringing to the parish libraries. One of the pieces we have was a grant that we did. We are a certified local government, and I'm a resident of Galvez, so I totally get that there's a lot of different delineations. But just when y'all are thinking about us in Donaldsonville, the amount of growth and the amount of building stock that we have here in historic Donaldsonville is amazing. We have 3 extremely large projects that are going on right now. Well, actually 4. We have the Bell House that's being restored at the moment. Capital One is actually bringing theirs back up, their old balcony, bringing that back up. The old Whitney Bank, the old Ascension Bank, is going through a massive reconstruction, and that's going to be a reception hall. Please think about doing parish activities there. And Security Insurance is actually taking over the Capitol building, and they're going to be putting a call bank in there. So I just wanted to bring this to highlight, to bring to y'all that we have so many things here in historic Donaldsonville in the parish of Ascension that as you have discussions with other people from the outside, we would love to have them here. We can bring them to whatever building they would like to come open their business. So thank you very much. I'm going to leave this up here if y'all need extra copies. And thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Item 5B is a proclamation to proclaim Child Abuse Prevention Month in Ascension Parish. Mr. President.
I'd like to call Stephanie up. We've been doing this now for 7 years. I know this because I've been here 7 years, and she started 7 years ago in doing this. So we kind of been in together since the beginning, and I think when she first started, she didn't have any children, so she has 2 now. So we're moving right along. All right, to proclaim April 2014 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Ascension Parish. Whereas child abuse and neglect are complex and ongoing problems in our society, affecting many children in our community, and whereas every child is entitled to be loved, cared for, nurtured, feel secure, and be free from verbal, sexual, emotional, and physical abuse and neglect. Whereas it is the responsibility of every adult who comes in contact with a child to protect that child's inalienable right to a safe and nurturing childhood. Whereas Ascension Parish has dedicated individuals and organizations who daily work to counter the problem of child maltreatment and to help parents obtain the assistance they need. Whereas our communities are stronger when all citizens become aware of child maltreatment prevention and become involved in supporting parents to raise their children in a safe and nurturing environment. And whereas effective child abuse prevention programs succeed because of partnerships among families, social service agencies, schools, religion, and civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. Whereas all citizens, community agencies, faith organizations, and businesses will work to increase their efforts to support families. Now, therefore, it be proclaimed, I, Tommy Martin, as President of the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, by the virtue of the authority vested in me, to hear and to proclaim April 2014 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Ascension Parish.
Every year I come and talk a little bit about the work that our agency does to make sure that we protect the kids in our parish. We work towards advocating for abused and neglected kids. A lot of people don't realize how often that happens. Last year, through our court-appointed special advocate program, we served 78 foster kids through the court system. We had over 100 forensic interviews that we did for children who may have been severely sexually abused or physically abused. That is a lot just in Ascension Parish alone. We're in April and we've already served over 60 kids that have been abused and neglected. A lot of people don't realize that it's happening right next door in their neighborhood with people they know, and there's things that you can do to make a difference. We are having a race next Saturday, April 12th, to help promote the awareness of child abuse and neglect and to take a stand against it. I think the more people who can take a stand against it, the better we can serve our children, the better future we can have in our parish and for our society. We are also very strongly promoting education to people about these types of issues. A lot of people don't realize how often it happens, when it happens, how to recognize it, and so we also offer a program completely free called Darkness to Light, where we can come into your organization and teach people about how to recognize sexual abuse, how to put policies in place to prevent kids from being abused, and make sure everybody knows about it. I know it's an odd topic, nobody likes to talk about it, but this stuff happens every single day. And the more we have realities of this happening, it's in the news all the time these days, and the news is only a small snippet of the actual cases that are occurring, then we can save our kids, we can save our future. So thank you so much for your support, and we greatly appreciate the continued commitment to making sure that we can serve the kids in this parish.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Well, you know, I think that happens every
Happens all the time. Be consistent. So much.
Thank you.
Item 5C is a proclamation to proclaim Fair Housing Month in Ascension Parish. Mr. President.
I'm going to ask Martha to come up also on this. To proclaim April 2014 as Fair Housing Month in Ascension Parish, whereas the 46th anniversary of National Fair Housing Law, Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968 during the month of April is an occasion for all Americans, individually and collectively, to rededicate themselves to the principle of freedom from housing discrimination whenever it exists. And whereas this law guarantees for each citizen the critical personal element of freely choosing a home, and whereas a fair housing law has been passed by the state of Louisiana, and implementation of the law requires the positive commitment, involvement, and support of each of our citizens, and whereas the department and agencies of the state of Louisiana are to provide leadership in the effort to make fair housing not just an idea for all citizens, and whereas the barriers that diminish the rights and limits the options of any citizen to freely choose a home will ultimately diminish the rights and limit the options of all. Now, therefore, it be proclaimed, I, Tommy Martinez, President of the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, by the virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereunder proclaim April 2014 as the Fair Housing Month in Ascension Parish, as Fair Housing Month in Ascension Parish. Martha.
Thank you, President Martinez, members of the council. Each year, we join the state in moving this forward because of a lot of the grants that we apply for is related to this in many ways. The Louisiana Community Development Block Grant, some of the HUD programs. So this is just a way of us showing our support for these type of programs, and that's why we're here to for you to recognize this. And if I would ask y'all to all come forward, we'd like to take a picture with the entire council, President Martinez. Please.
Can you get gentlemen to double up? Everybody double up. Two pictures? No, three. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Item number 6 is the parish president's report. Mr. President has nothing. Okay, we'll move on to item number 7, which is the consent agenda. Chair would entertain a motion to move on that, to adopt. Motion by Councilman Johnson, second by Councilman Dempsey Lambert. Any objections? Consent agenda passes. We'll move on to committee recommendations. Number 8, the personnel committee recommendations. Our personnel committee chairman, Mr. Todd Lambert.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We met, we had several boards to fill some applicants on. First one, we had Fire District number 1. We had a new applicant, Mr. Alan Jews.
Motion.
Only one opening.
Second. Motion by Councilman Johnson.
Second.
Second by Councilman Schexnayder. Any discussion? Any objections? The motion passes.
We had some reappointments on the same board. Number 1, Fire Department, Nathaniel Stevens.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Turner, second by Councilman Johnson. Discussion? Objections? Motion passes.
Also had Mr. James LeBlanc.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Kluwat, second by Councilman Schexnayder. Discussion? Objections? Motion passes.
And Mr. Darius Hill.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Johnson, second by Councilwoman Cazo. Discussion? Objections? Motion passes.
Just one thing on that, Mr. Alan Jews is just filling a remaining 1 year of Mr. Charles A. Barron that resigned.
Okay.
Second is
Mr. Chairman.
Fire District
Count-
number 3.
Hold on one second, please. Councilman Schexnayder?
I want to take this time to thank Mr. Charles for
Yep.
a long time he served and everything, and did so very, very hard work and very, very good. So we want to take this time to acknowledge his efforts, so thank you.
Great. Councilman Larry.
Fire District number 3, we had one new applicant, Cody Malonzo, who's recommended.
Motion by Councilman Dempsey Lambert, second by Councilwoman Cazzo. Any discussion? Any objections? That motion passes.
And reappointment of Mr. Gary Newman.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Cazzo, second by Councilman Johnson. Any discussion? Any objections? That motion passes.
And also Cody is filling Mr. Mike Doran's place that resigned.
Okay. Councilwoman Cazzo?
Like Councilman Shake Snyder, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Mike Doran, who has served for many years with Fire District 3's board and done a valiant work there. He's a firefighter at BASF with lots of experience. Brought a tremendous amount of knowledge to our district board when we first were created many years ago. So my thanks to him.
Great. Councilman Lambert?
We had a board, the Zoning Board of Adjustments and Appeals. We had 2 openings, 1 applicant, Mr. Milton Vigner, but had no motion on the floor, so we have to, no choice but to re-advertise for that position. We'll move on to interviews for, huh? Yeah, no clue. I did what I said. Sorry, Bill. ACU number 1, we got 2 applicants that put in, Mr. Douglas Shake Snyder.
So moved.
Motion by Councilman Ken Shake Snyder, second by Councilman Joseph. Any discussion? Any objections? That motion passes.
And Mr. Robert Charleville.
So moved.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Cazzo, and a second from
Second.
Councilman Joseph. Okay. Any discussion? Any objections? That motion passes.
Last is Planning and Zoning Commission. These were all reappointments. Mr. Robert Burgess.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilman Shake Snyder, second by Councilwoman Cazzo. Any discussion? Any objections? That motion passes.
Mr. Donald Sanjay.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Johnson,
Second.
second by Councilwoman Cazzo. Discussion? Objections? Motion passes.
Third, Mr. Jackie Callender.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilwoman Johnson, second by motion by Councilwoman Cazzo, second by Councilman Shake Snyder.
You just sound like Johnson.
Yeah, well, sorry. Any discussion? Any objections? That motion passes.
And Mr. Maury Bishop.
Motion by Councilman Kluwat,
Second.
second by Councilman Johnson. This was on Maury, I'm sorry. Is that Maury Bishop? Okay.
Maury Bishop.
Any discussion? Any objections? That motion passes.
And just to let the public know, we do have a opening there. Mr. Paul Nizo had resigned, but we had no new applicants for this board, so we do need to re-advertise for that.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Councilman Lambert.
All right?
Mr. Chairman?
Councilman Satterley?
Yes. I guess I misunderstood. I thought I heard the name Mr. Vigner for,
No, that's Kluwat, I'm sorry. That was a
okay.
mistake on my part.
So,
Mr. Milton Kluwat.
did he interview for this position?
Yes, he interviewed for that position, but we had no motion on the floor.
So
So a lack
my
of
understanding is you have to
motion, I have to-
re-advertise, that's forced by law?
I guess being that we didn't have a motion on the floor, that killed that applicant, yes. So it has to be re-advertised because we still have an opening for that board.
I just want to be absolutely certain, the gentleman is in my district, and if he applied for it and he didn't get an up-down vote, I'm wondering why.
I was the chairman. I didn't have a vote in the matter, so.
I guess I don't have much to say, but is that a fair thing to do? And I mean, do we need someone? How long has it been advertised? And if no other person from any other district wants to apply,
Yeah, I agree with you.
and I'm not just asking you, Todd. I guess I'm asking all my fellow councilmen here, if anybody wants to speak as to what the problem is. I mean,
And I think someone spoke to Mr. Brad Walker, who's on the board, who chairs that board, and said he would gladly have Mr. Milton on board, but
so once again, I guess I'm questioning what is the problem? So if we go out back and advertise, and this gentleman applies again and others or not, and he's the only one, how many times are we going to advertise?
Chris?
And I guess one big thing tonight, it wasn't on our official agenda, it was on the personnel agenda, so we really can't vote on anything as far as, you know, putting him back on tonight. According to Mr. O'Neill, he could probably clear that up for us. But it's not on the agenda item for some reason. You know, anyway, it was on the personnel committee, but it's not on council agenda.
Councilwoman Cazzo?
That was my question, is could we even discuss this tonight? I mean, can we do this on?
No,
on
you need to
another
make a
occasion?
motion, you have to have a motion to add it to the agenda before you can discuss it.
I'd like to make a motion to add it to the agenda.
Okay.
It has to be a unanimous vote.
It'll have to be unanimous. I have a motion to add to the agenda by Councilman Lonsall. Do I have a second?
I say.
I have a second. Are there any objections in adding it to the agenda? We have an objection by Councilman Johnson. Therefore, that motion will not be added to the agenda. Any other discussion on the item? Well, actually, it's not an item, so with that, I will move on to item number 9, consideration of the recommendations from the Professional Engineering Selection Committee for the St. Landry Road Edenbourne Connector Project.
Good evening. On March 10, 2014, the Purchasing Department received 9 proposals for the St. Landry Road Edenbourne Connector. After review, the Engineering Selection Committee awarded the highest scores to Neil Schaefer with a score of 420, Vocart Incorporated with a score of 418, and Hartman Engineering with a score of 416. The Engineering Selection Committee recommends accepting the highest-ranked proposal submitted by Neil Schaefer and to authorize the parish president to begin contract negotiations for this service.
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilman Schexnayder.
Second.
For the number 1 choice, Neil Schaefer, and a second by Councilwoman Cazzo. Councilman Turner?
Make a substitute motion to accept Volkert.
A second.
Okay, I have a substitute motion by Councilman Turner and a second by Councilman Melanson for Volkert. Discussion? Councilwoman Cazzo?
You have to accept my apology for sounding like Benny Johnson tonight, but something's come over me. We have a selection process, the integrity of which is brought into question when we do not listen to that selection committee and their recommendations. It's certainly been my position when I got here on this council that my choice would always be number 1. And I know I failed in that on one occasion, and I regret that to this day. And there's the reasons are this. It is very discouraging to a firm who applies and wins to be rejected at this level. It is very discouraging to members of the selection committee to work to determine a winner in this case and be rejected, the work that they did. And quite frankly, I think it allows the public to believe that politics plays a part in this process. I can look at these folks sitting on the front row and tell you absolutely that I am fond of all of them. Ann Traffay with Horton Tablata is a great woman. I admire her above many women in this world. I love Juba Diaz. Jared Monso's family lives in my district. I admire him, love them all. But number 1 was Neil Schaefer. And to avoid the appearance, in my mind, of impropriety here, I think that this council should consider that number 1 is who we should go with. Thank you.
Other discussion? Councilman Schexnayder?
I just want to say we've been very lucky. We have some outstanding firms. You can take top 6, 7 firms that made application for this job. We're very fortunate in Ascension Parish. They are outstanding, every one of them. I would be very pleased and excited to have any one of them. I want to make that statement public to everyone. Very well satisfied. I'm just of the opinion this is a process because in my mind, there's no significant difference that I would acquiesce to the selection committee. If this body so chooses to go with someone else, we'll move forward. We'll go. I think it's going to be a very positive thing no matter what happens. So I don't think this is a negative in any way. And I know there has been interest on a number of firms. So we're very lucky to have a number of people that we have, and I just acquiesce to the process that we have. I think that's one of the best things that we do in Ascension Parish. That's one of the reasons why so many people apply, so many good companies apply, because they do think they have a shot if they put their reputation out there and their expertise, and they put their people that they put together for a particular project. So I think that's very important to keep going, and for that's why I made the motion, and so be it. If it's not the way, we'll support whoever this body selects and move forward in a very positive manner. So we appreciate everybody for their efforts.
Further discussion? Councilman Satterley?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Oh, wow. When I hear one of my councilmen say that, there's a problem when we don't listen to a selection committee, I have a problem when that same councilman votes to recommend on a committee I recently chaired to support a certain decision made, and then votes again on the same committee that that person chairs in finance, only to come to the full council and vote against the first two votes. I do agree with the other councilman that spoke that we have a good process. I would call it certainly a reasonable one. I think it could be tweaked some more, and I've talked to several of my fellow councilmen about this behind the scenes. But the way I've been doing this in the past on the Utilities Committee that I serve on for the last two go-rounds with RFQs and RFPs and such is to perform statistical analyses, which I've done again for the companies involved. And I think the public needs to know there were 9 in this professional engineering committee that we are discussing whether or not they really picked a winner or not. There were 5. And I want to start by saying the top 2 that are on the table right now, Neil Schaefer and Volkert, are only separated by 4/10. I'll repeat that, 4/10 of 1 point. In other words, even before doing a statistical analysis, and I'm going to give you those results just shortly, 5 professional engineers essentially said those 2 guys have 4/10 of a point difference. And as a former college professor, if I'm going to pick on the president, if I assigned him a 98.6 on an exam, and Chairman Lohr, I gave a 98.2 on the exam, that's 4/10 of a point. Am I to reasonably look to conclude that Tommy Martinez is that much smarter than Chris Lohr? Or is it possible that if we administered the same examination again, the 2 individuals would reverse themselves by the same or perhaps even larger margin? The statistical analysis I performed shows, in fact, I think one of the councilmen just said this, many people can do this job, a lot more than even the top 2, because the ties with 45 possible pairwise treatment comparisons of the mean difference scores of these 5 professional engineers shows, with the exception of the last placed company being different from both of the top 2 companies, everybody was tied. Now this creates a particular dilemma. But as a councilman, I realize I have the responsibility then to pick a winner, and I wish it were an easier task. So I asked for all the RFQs. They were given to me Friday. That's a whole other subject, and I don't think we need to air that dirty laundry here. But I spent the weekend studying them. I met with 3 or 4 of the different individuals who wanted my ear, let them add or subtract whatever they had to say about their proposals. And I believe by a small margin, well, I say a lot can do this, I think Volkert gets the nod over Neil Schaefer. I might also point out there's other interesting parts about this population. When you look at the 5 engineers again advising us, 3 of the 5 professional engineers chose Volkert over Neil Schaefer as the #1 scorer of all 9 applicants. 1 scorer tied Volkert and Neil Schaefer, and the 5th scorer and final one picked Neil Schaefer over Volker. So we had 3 one way, 1 the other way, and a virtual tie. Again, this was very, very close. It's a difficult decision. If you ask me about one singular thing that stood out in my mind, the work that that company has done in the past on the I-10 and the I-12 corridors makes me feel like, you know, they would be a decent choice to do this. Down the line, maybe we can tweak the process a little bit better. I've already been complimentary of the president, and I'll compliment him again. When I first started serving, we had some people on that committee that weren't engineers, the secretaries, attorneys, who have even said, you know, I'm not really qualified, and actually probably no more qualified than any one of us up here. Everybody knows I'm a former chicken doctor, but I read everything I possibly could, and I've made a tough decision tonight. I support, by a slim motion, the #2 company by 4/10 of a point over the #1 company. And I thank everyone for listening.
Councilman Johnson.
I also looked at the information presented and we had some discussion about different things. I too want to support the process. I think when the process was brought forward to us, we looked at it from a standpoint of view of, like was said before, of trying to keep this to a point of professionalism and getting the right people that are more educated in engineering to look at the different situations that are out there, the different projects that are there, to evaluate what engineers are telling them and make sense to us as to who is the right person for this or the right company for this job or any job that we have. While one of the things that we've done for ourselves in order to give us a little bit of leeway to hopefully not give one particular company all of the business for the parish, to make it look like something is not right with that, they give us the top 3 and we can pick. And so then I kind of look at it from my perspective to say, is there something wrong with the process? Did something happen that would cause me not to trust or not to put the numbers closer together or go after #2 or #3? In this particular case, I know of no incident or nothing that took place with the selection committee that would warrant going against #1. If there is, I understand there's some issues. There's been a lot of movement in the engineering world in the first part of this year, and there may be some issues with different companies and how they're getting tasks done nowadays. And some of those may be legitimate concerns. I know of that, not definitely, just kind of hearsay. So then, if that does turn out to be a definite with one of these companies having some issues along those lines, then as far as the next thing that I can remember us having discussions about as far as putting this out there from a standpoint of view of letting different companies do work for us that are qualified. I also feel that these 3 companies are eminently qualified to do this particular project. And so from there, I kind of looked at it from a financial standpoint of view and who have we done the most business with and who have we done the least business with. And I can, from the numbers that I received from the administration, Neil Schaefer is by around $1,000 on the short end of this over Volkert. So you have #1 and #2. While I will support the #1 pick, unless someone can give me a reason why not to, I don't see much difference in whether we do #1 or 2. And like Councilman Shakespeare said, I don't think we can go wrong with either one of these companies in getting this project done.
Any further discussion? If not, we will vote. I'm sorry, Mr. President.
Just want to clarify a statement by Dr. Satterley that we've never had an attorney or a secretary on our engineering selection committee. It's always been on our non-engineering selection committee. We do have 2, and sometimes when we do pick other professions, we do that. But we've never not had engineers on our engineering selection committee. So there's 2 different ones.
Mr. Chairman. Councilman Satterley.
I thank President for the correction, I did misspeak, but I have seen that in the past, and there's been some changes along those lines where some people, even on those committees, let me get it correct, if you allow me, Mr. President, said that they didn't feel comfortable, and I believe that was Mr. Parrington. So, and he's sitting right here, and he can change his mind if he likes, but
No, I just never felt comfortable because I got to represent it.
I understand.
Not because I was-
Well, I tell you what, I'll be honest, I don't feel comfortable either. I don't know how anybody up here could. We all come from all different backgrounds, but none of us are engineers. That's all the point I was trying to make, and I did misspeak. Tommy, I thank you for the correction.
Councilwoman Cazo.
I just want to make one more comment. Each one of these processes is not a statistical analysis. It's a competition. And there's no doubt in my mind that if LSU plays Alabama on one field one day, they might win by 3 points, and if they play them again on another field on another day, they might lose. But when we do this selection process, it is a competitive process. And for me, the winner is the winner on the day he won. And so that's just the only thing I wanted to add to the conversation.
Okay. Councilman Turner.
Kind of to echo what Doc said, as further as you look at it, was 5 votes, and you had 3 that voted higher than Neil Schaefer. So basically, it just comes down to the way it's scored. If you voted by the number of members who voted you number 1, then Volker would be number 1. Basically, we just did it by the score. So the way this was judged, or the way it's scored, who determines first, makes a big difference of who was number 1 the way we did this. I mean, if we just changed the way we scored this one as far as who had the highest number of votes for number 1, Volker would be number 1. So, I mean, it's just a matter of semantics in that instance. So that's why I feel comfortable with going with Volker.
Any other discussion? Okay, we'll move on a vote for the substitute motion, which was for Volker. Madam Secretary, I'm going to go ahead and do a roll call here.
Councilwoman Cazo.
No.
Councilman Kluwat.
Yes.
Councilman Johnson.
No.
Councilman Joseph.
Yes.
Councilman Dempsey Lambert.
Yes.
Councilman Todd Lambert.
Yes.
Councilman Brian Melanson.
Yes.
Councilman Satterley.
Yes.
Councilman Shake Snyder.
No.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Okay, that vote passes by 7-3. We will move on to item number 10, which is an introduction of an ordinance to levy millages on the 2014 tax roll on all property subject to taxation by the Ascension Parish government. Motion introduced by Councilman Johnson.
Second.
Second by Councilman Kluwat. Any objections? Ordinance is introduced. We'll move to item 11, which is the reading of an ordinance to declare surplus and authorize the sale and/or transfer of miscellaneous movable equipment. Mr. Parrington.
To declare surplus and authorize the sale or transfer of miscellaneous movable equipment, whereas the Parish of Ascension has certain assets that are no longer viable to retain, and whereas those assets no longer serve or have any public purpose, whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to declare said assets as surplus and provide for sale and transfer of the same. Whereas be it ordained the Ascension Parish Council, acting in its capacity as a governing authority, that is hereby declares the listing of all assets attached hereto and made a part hereof as Exhibit A as surplus and authorizes the sale and transfer of the same. In the event any portion of the ordinance is ever held to be invalid or unconstitutional for any reason by any court of competent jurisdiction over it, such portion shall be deemed separate, distinct, and independent provision and shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of the ordinance. The effect of the ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. The ordinance have been submitted for a vote.
Open the public hearing.
Motion to open the public hearing by Councilman Satterley. Second by Councilman Johnson.
Motion to close.
I have a motion to close. Councilman Satterley.
Second.
Second by Councilman Todd Lambert.
Motion.
Motion to move the ordinance by Councilman Kluwat.
Second.
Second by Councilman Dempsey Lambert. Any discussion? Any objections? Ordinance is adopted. We'll move to 14, which is reading of an ordinance DR 14-01, revisions to drainage regulations in the Unified Land Development Code pertaining to erosion and sediment control. Mr. Parrington.
Clarify when the stormwater pollution prevention plans are required by the LPDES permits and to require the submission and inspection of reports that are required by the LPDES permits. Whereas Ascension Parish is a local government subdivision as defined by Article 6, Section 44, Louisiana Constitution of 1974. Whereas Article 6 of the Home Rule Charter of Ascension Parish adopted May 4, 1993, identifies the process and manner in which to adopt ordinances regulating the lands of this parish. whereas the Ascension Parish Regional Planning Commission adopted subdivision regulations as part of the official plan of the parish in accordance with Louisiana Revised Statutes on January 21st, 1971. The Parish Council adopted Regulation 5 of the Unified Land Development Code on December 17th of 2009. Whereas it's necessary to clarify when stormwater pollution prevention plans are required by the LPDES permits and require the submission of inspection reports that are required by the LPDES permits. Be it ordained the Ascension Parish Governing Authority that Section 17-509 of the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code is removed as an attached Exhibit A. Additions are underlined and deletions are strike through. In the event any portion of the ordinance is ever held invalid or unconstitutional for any reason by the court of competent jurisdiction over such portion shall be deemed separate and distinct and independent provisions shall not effectively the remaining portions of the ordinance. The ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. The exhibits are Section 17-509 with revisions. The ordinance have been submitted to the vote.
Open public comment.
Have a motion open public hearing by Councilman Satterley. Second by Councilman Dempsey Lambert.
Motion to close.
Have a motion to close by Councilman Satterley.
Excuse me, I withdraw my motion. I see
I'm
a
sorry.
guy rising to speak.
Okay. Mr. Aguilar.
Thank you, Councilman and Councilwoman. I just have to respectfully disagree with the staff's recommendation to adopt. What this basically is, they want us to send them another report. DEQ requires you to do a stormwater prevention pollution plan on every project you do basically in Ascension Parish. DEQ doesn't even want a copy of that permit. They want you to send them a notice of intent. And they send DEQ wants them to send them these, you either do a monthly inspection report and then you do an incident report every time it rains. So you can either have one report, 32 reports, or if you do it on a weekly basis, you got one monthly report and 4, maybe 5 weekly reports. And it's a piece of paper. It's really not that hard. It's not hard to push a button and send it to the parish. But it's just an unnecessarily piece of paper that the parish just doesn't need. And it's just an extra burden on us to send this piece of paper to y'all. And like I said, for some reason, every time we send a fax to the parish, I don't know, the fax machine must just like to eat paper because it seems to never get to who it needs to go to. Every time we send an email to the parish, it gets sent out into cyberspace somewhere, and they never get it. So they always call us wanting another copy of the stuff. And it happens all the time. And again, if DEQ wanted this, they would get the reports from us to begin with. They don't even want the SWEP plan. The parish wants the SWEP plan, which is fine. We give them a copy at the beginning of the job. But this is just something that is just really an undue burden of paperwork on people that do SWEP reports and do the reporting information. And thank you again. That's just my comment.
Okay. Mr. Petty?
So to add in, I guess, the staff's reasoning behind this is the LPDES permits require this reporting. They also require that a SWIP plan is prepared. Our standpoint is they're being required, and Mr. Aguilar is actually correct. DEQ does not require them to be submitted to their office. However, they look to the parish to monitor the operations that's going on within our MS4 permit that we are required to actually have. And so the situation is they're required to do so. They're required to complete these reports. The only thing that we're saying is just send us a copy of it. We're not asking anyone to do any more work than it's already being required of them. Matter of fact, if a DEQ representative is, to come on one of these sites, you're to have these reports and the SWIP plan available for them to be able to review. But in this situation, like I said, we're really not asking for any additional work to be done. We're just asked to be included in the loop of the communication. And the reasoning behind it is we have noticed that a number of our subdivision developments within the parish, work is being done, and contractors are hired to oversee these plans and to create these reports and do these inspections. However, when we're sending our crews out to look at it, it's obvious that these kinds of inspections and things of that nature are not happening. And in one particular instance that I can think of, we actually called the company that was in charge of that activity, and they sent a couple of reports, and it was the exact same report. The only difference was it had a different date of that inspection. Now, what our intentions are is this is going to be backup documentation for us with our MS4 report and our stormwater report that we have to prepare every single year. But it's also going to help us see that this that is being required is actually being done. Does that make sense?
Councilman Shakespeare?
Yes, thank you. I'm trying to find a little bit more about who is requiring this information? DEQ?
It's required through the LPDES permits that are pulled on sites that are greater than.
My question, who is requiring it? DEQ?
Well, I think ultimately that would be the agency, yes, sir,
Okay.
DEQ.
And so why are we collecting something for DEQ?
We are not.
Well, you said, but it's required by DEQ, but we are, and I'm just trying to get a handle on it.
Well, the SWIP plan is also required by DEQ.
I don't understand the connection, that's what.
The SWIP plan itself is required by DEQ, but as you heard Mr. Aguilar, DEQ does not require a copy of that. However, currently, right now, the parish requires a copy of that to be reviewed so that we can verify that there is indeed a plan in place for stormwater pollution prevention.
Okay.
This
now,
is just another piece of that plan.
Who is going to monitor that?
Our stormwater department.
Okay, and is there a time limit for that? Because, you know, what I don't want to get into, and regardless of construction or whatever, is that we overburden different construction contractors or whatever, that more paperwork, more this, more that. If this is something that's absolutely necessary, we need to do. If it is necessary, we need to make sure it's a time and manner, and it doesn't get something that's going to be held up, and because if it's something that they require, then they're already doing it.
They should be, yes, sir.
And the other question, when are they required to send it in?
The language reads that they're to send them at the frequency noted in the SWIP. So at that, we haven't really, I guess, defined how many days after or whatever the case is. And I guess that's probably what you're asking, is it not?
Well, and I'm trying to get a hold to, you know, this process, and then when it happens, you know, how long does it happen, and then what happens if it's not followed through, and then what's the consequences for the contractor? And it is a valid thing, because communication between contracts, and all of a sudden, 5 or 6 days means a lot for anyone that's going out there and doing work. And this, to me, would not be something that's a high priority to get out in a timely manner for the parish. And so I don't want people to be held up for without reason.
And I totally understand what you're saying. In most cases, most of our residential development projects that are going on, which is, you know, where the majority of this would be affected, hire companies that is what their business is to oversee, manage, and create these SWIP plans and do these inspections. And so we're not per se, I mean, it's not a situation of the literal contractor out there submitting these reports. It's companies that's their business to prepare these sorts of things. They should be preparing them. We're just asking them to drop them in an email and send them to us.
Correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking about 1 acre?
1 acre or greater.
Okay, so that's small. And Billy, I think you had a comment on it?
Thank you, Mr. Shakespeare. The SWIP plan, you can do it a number of different ways, but basically, if we as a contractor do it, we do it, you have to do an inspection once a month, period. That's federal law. Then you can either do it after every rain event. So you could have 31 rain events a month. You'd have to do an inspection after every day. Or if you, like he said, you can hire a company, like D.R. Horton hires a company to do theirs for them. Now, we as a contractor, if I'm doing a subdivision, we do it ourselves. But if a company does it that D.R. Horton or somebody else hires, they're going to do it once a week. And that's basically on a Saturday. So it can rain Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday morning, they do an inspection. Environmentals out there are looking at, well, they're not cleaning up anything. Well, if they do the report on Saturday, you basically got 2 or 3 days to do the corrective actions that they require you to do. So it may be a week to 9 days before we get out there to do the corrective action because we don't have the report. But again, DEQ does not require this report to be sent to them. And if the parish wants to see it, it's got to be either on site filed with the SWEP plan, or it's got to be at whoever's home office. That's got to be a minimum of 45 minutes from the job site. So if his inspector goes out there and wants to see a copy report, all he's got to do is go to the SWEP plan. There's a person of record, a responsibility on a SWEP plan. Their phone number's on that. All you got to do is call them and say, I want to see your reports right now. Bring them out here. You got 45 minutes to get them here. We'll bring them out there to them. But what basically happens, and it happens, and again, I'm not saying anything bad about the staff at all, but the fax machines in the emails that they get, they always call us asking for the stuff again. And it's just an extra burden on us to send them another piece of paper that really is not needed. The MS4s that they got to do annually, all they need is a copy of the SWEP plans, and their reports, they need to make a report when they go out and look at it to see the times and the dates that they go out and do it. And that's more than adequate for what they need. Thank you.
Well, and my concern is, you know, and please, I appreciate, you know, what you guys are trying to do. But is that a large company that can hire someone to do multiple things, and they do that, it's not a burden.
Well,
it does get to be something that a small company doing a single job and things like that gets to be something else. That's a paperwork thing, and my only question was that, and we're making probably more of it than it needs to be, is that, you know, is it something that's absolutely necessary for us to do different from what we're doing it now? What type of problems are we having? That's what I was trying to find.
Ken, it's not really a burden. It is very easy to add Ascension Parish Planning Department to an email when you send out an email. But when it becomes a burden is when we get down to do a final inspection or something, and they say, hey, we're not going to do your final inspection because we don't have this report. And it happens all the time. And I can show you, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying anything bad about any staff member, but I have brought literally the same paper to the parish 4 times and get the final inspection and say, we don't have a copy of that. And have to bring it to them again before they're located to do a final inspection. And that's the only reason that I object to this. It's not that it's hard to send them a copy at all, it's not. But it's just when they don't have the paperwork at the end of the thing, and we prove to them that we sent it to them, they said, it don't matter, we want a copy of the report again. And that's my only.
Councilman Johnson.
Can we move this to strategic planning? I'm not aware of what committee this came through. Maybe we can kind of get a better handle on it there, and then if necessary or whatever, bring it back to the council for a decision on it at that time. Is there any issue with doing something like that from?
That's up to you.
I have a motion to refer this to the Strategic Planning Committee, and a second by Councilman Dempsey Lambert, I think was first on the second. So is there any discussion, Councilman Clouet?
Yeah, well, while you're up there, just, what did you, I'm trying to look at the intent all the time, okay? 'Cause I've done what he's doing, okay? What was your need for this change?
Okay,
Just simple,
so
short need. You said
very,
it a
very
while
quickly,
ago,
I would like to
repeat
add
one more
this. The submittals of these reports in no way would hold up a job, you know, being completed. Because what would hold that up is our stormwater inspectors being on site and seeing violations that we would issue a corrective notice to, and if they're not corrected, we would issue a stop work order. That comes from our department. We're not relying on these reports to do that. Our intention here is to merely, and I think Mr. Aguilar was talking about reports that are already being sent. Those are construction testing reports and things of that nature. They're, you know, we require that those to be submitted. This intent is they're already required to do this. We would like to be in the loop as to what's going on, namely for the fact that when we complete our stormwater master plans, we are required to show that we are actually actively involved and engaged in the development inside our MS4 boundary for ensuring that the pollution prevention process is being taken care of. And so it's a reporting mechanism for us to ensure that this is being taken care of.
Isn't initially within his submittal to the parish for permits and all that SWPPP is in there, right? He should have a plan prior to issuing a permit submitted?
Yes, you're asking, are you required to have a SWIP before you start work?
Yeah.
Yes, that
Okay.
answer to that question is yes.
All right, so you got his plan, and his plan is reviewed, and it's either deemed good, bad, or indifferent. You go back and tell him, hey, well, I think you need a little bit more silt fencing there, or you need to guard against this canal versus this ditch, whatever, okay? All right, so he's got it in. And you want this report sent to you on what timely basis right now? restate that.
In the case of the way that the ordinance is written, it's at the frequency that's defined by the SWIP, that the reports would be completed, it's that same frequency that we would like them to be sent to our
Okay,
office.
what is the common frequency that's been submitted?
Monthly
approved.
is the bare minimum.
Okay, monthly is the bare minimum.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so when the inspectors go out, when you find a condition unsatisfactory, you just use that word. You find a condition unsatisfactory due to whatever, either neglect, hard rain, whatever it takes. And at that time, they request his reports, okay? All right, Mr. Aguilar made a statement that you send reports in, and, the fax machine's eating them, and, the emails go to the cloud. Well, I'm gonna tell you what, it's just your department here tonight. But we do get complaints from a lot of different people in different departments within the parish that, they have to resend, go back and look and do things like that, so. But you're staying within, he has to follow the rules, the same rules. It's just him sending you the report.
A copy, yes, sir.
A copy of the report on,
Because the SWIP that we review is the plan in which they tell you how they're going to take care of it. The reports show you actually how they are taking care
but
of
when
it.
you SWIP, when you stormwater pollution prevention plan, as it's entered, the time of permit says 1 month.
That's the bare minimum.
That's the bare minimum. Well, are you approving plans with the bare minimum, with 1 month? No, I'm talking to him.
Mr. Chairman, hold on just
Councilman
one second. We can
Dempsey
go back and forth all night. I'm gonna call a question on motion. Let's bring it back and let's get clarification.
Okay, I have a call on the previous question. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Longsaw. This will require a 2/3 to end the debate. Is there anybody that objects to the question, the call on the previous question? Hearing none, we'll consider that unanimous. And that will end the debate on this item, and we now will vote on the motion to refer this to the Strategic Planning Committee. I had a motion and I had a second there. Is there any objection to that motion? Hearing none, that motion passes. We will move to item number 17, which is the reading of an ordinance to amend an ordinance providing for the increase of fees assessed by the sheriff. Mr. Parrington.
To amend the ordinance adopted November 5th, 2009, amended on December 17th, 2009, June 3rd, 2010, and June 2nd of 2011 by the governing authority in and for Ascension Parish, providing for certain administrative functions relative to the continued operations and maintenance of Lamar Dixon Expo Center subject to certain restrictions. Whereas the Ascension Parish Charter, whereas the Charter of Ascension Parish, Section 6-1 requires an ordinance for all acts to regulate rates or other charges for service provided by the parish and all amendments to those acts. Whereas an ordinance authorizing the parish of Ascension to assess and collect certain fees for operation of the Lamar District Expo Center was adopted by Ascension Parish on November 5th, 2009, amended on December 17th, 2009, and a meeting on June 2nd, 2011. And whereas the Ascension Parish Charter, Section 6-01 requires an ordinance for all acts to regulate the rate or other charges for service provided by the parish, therefore be it ordained the Ascension Parish Council, the governing authority in and for the parish of Ascension, does hereby supplement the fee scheduled previously by amending the fees for the operation of Lamar Dixon Expo Center. Traffic police officer was the old rate was 30, the new rate is 35 per hour. Event police, 30, old rate 30, new rate 30 per hour. All other fees and rates of the original ordinance dated November 5th, 2009, and amended on December 17th, 2009, and on June 3 of 2010 and June 2nd of 2011 remain unchanged. The ordinance have been submitted to a vote. The vote thereon was as follows.
Motion open for public hearing.
Motion open for public hearing by Councilman Johnson, second by Councilman Kluwat.
Motion to close.
Motion to close by Councilman Johnson, second by Councilman Todd Lambert.
Move to order.
Motion to move the ordinance by Councilman Johnson, second by Councilman Longsaw. Any discussion? Any objections? Ordinance is adopted. Item 20 is an ordinance, reading of an ordinance budget amendment number 1 to amend the 2014 budget. Mr. Parrington.
An ordinance to amend the ordinance approving, adopting, and appropriating 2014 operating and capital budgets for the parish of Ascension adopted by the Ascension Parish Council on the 7th day of November 2013. Section 1, the Ascension Parish Council hereby ordains that the ordinance approving, adopting, and appropriating the 2014 operating and capital budgets for the parish of Ascension is hereby amended, approved, and appropriated as follows: operating budget, ACUD number 2, expenditures and other financing uses, transfer out CDBG construction, $253,000. Capital budget, CBDG construction fund revenues and other financing sources, transfer in ACUD number 2, $253,000. Expenditures and other financing uses, CBDG, the parish sewer construction, $253,000. This ordinance had been submitted to a vote. The vote thereon was as follows.
Motion, public hearing.
Motion open public hearing by Councilman Todd Lambert, second by Councilman Satterley.
Motion to close public hearing.
Motion to close by Councilman Lonson.
Second.
Second by Councilman Todd Lambert.
Move the order.
Motion.
Motion to move the ordinance by Councilman Todd Lambert, second by Councilman Kluwat. Any discussion? Any objections? That ordinance passes. Sergeant Denby, thanks for being with us tonight.
Motion adjourned.
Motion to adjourn by Councilman Todd Lambert, second by Councilman Kluwat. Any objections? We are adjourned.